That was
Derek?
horrible.
Derek! I'm lost, Derek. I can't see you. Are you here? It's so dark in here.
Yeah!
Is that you?
Yeah!
I can hear you.
I'm here!
It's so dark and I feel so alone.
Walk towards that big red portal.
Oh,
See what it says above it?
It says, what is that? I can't read it.
Bad video game horror adaptions.
I'm going towards the light.
I know you want to go towards the blue portal that says good video game adaptions, but there's only like a couple behind that one. You want to walk towards the red one that has like all the good content.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome
Hi.
to That Was Horrorble. I am Isaac.
I am Derek.
And we have gone to the red portal this week to watch Alone in the Dark 2005.
2005. Not to be confused with every other Alone in the Dark on the face of the
Apparently
planet.
there are a couple of them, and they differ very much from each other,
Yes.
as I've discovered. So
It's actually, I think it's funny that it's such a popular name, but at the same time it makes sense. I mean, like, that's one of the greatest fears.
right, exactly. Like just fear of the darkness and fear of being alone, right? Alone
Yeah.
in the dark. It's a recipe for what should be great,
Yes.
right? It should make sense. Sometimes it does not work out.
It does not. All right, let's jump right in. This was adapted from the video game series of the same name. There are, I believe, 6 games.
Which I honestly didn't believe until Derek told me, even showed me a little bit of one game. I'm like, you made this game like last night. There's no way this ever existed. Never heard of this.
It was by Atari, and it was way back. I should have looked at the first date, but it was somewhere in the 80s. But I actually remember playing this game as a kid, and it scared the crap out of me. The first one is like super polygoned. It actually has the Guinness World Record for the first 3D survival horror game ever.
Oh, really?
So it kind of like laid the trail for your Resident Evils.
Yeah,
and such.
okay, yeah. Get out of the way. The good horror games are coming now.
So this was adapted from the video game series of the same name, but it was mostly from the reboot series that started in 2001 called The New Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Alone in the Dark tells the story of Edward Carnby. And this
What
is
a name.
I'm talking about the games right now. I'm just going to give you a quick little rundown of the games. It tells the story of Edward Carnby, who is a paranormal investigator. He gets thrown through like a crazy plot. It was actually based on a bunch of Lovecraftian stories. So it has Lovecraftian demons, ancient artifacts, some like H.R. Geiger looking things. And then he finds out towards the end of the 3 games that he's like an entity who had to come back and help rid the world of all these demons and stuff. So like it takes place in the 1900s, but then he finds out that he's like from the 1800s.
That sounds kick-ass. That sounds great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, those games have not aged well, as you found out when I was trying to show them to you.
They were not incredibly interesting.
No.
But that story is good.
Yeah, it's really cool. It had like these creepy zombies. It had these like bipedal rats that were huge that like attacked you.
Absolutely not.
And then it came back in 2001 with The New Nightmare, which kind of just shot forward in time and kind of reset the series.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Alone in the Dark, the games, but we are not here to talk to you about the great games.
No, we're not here to talk about that, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, like the later games were actually really bad. But
So maybe just the first one.
yeah, the first like 4 are great.
Okay. Of how many?
6, I think.
6.
Yeah, so
that's a lot.
Yeah, they sucked. All right, so this is our lowest rated movie so far. It's even hard to call it a horror movie, but it's at the top of all of the horror lists.
Yeah, that's what was really like shocking to me after watching this movie, because like we'll get into it, but I'm not sure how much of a horror movie this actually is more than it is like a thriller, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But on every single list we can find online about like worst rated horror movies of all time, it is always Alone in the Dark 2005 is like way up there towards the top.
Well, and you would want it to be a horror movie because of the games.
Right, exactly. It's a horror game, so an adaptation of that should be a horror movie, right?
I was terrified of golden chests as a child because of the original Alone in the Dark.
Oh no, Derek, look, a golden chest.
Oh, it's just a mimic. We're good. So, yeah, it's our lowest rated movie. It has a 1% on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics' reviews are 1%.
Yeah, and they are brutal.
They are brutal. The audience score is only 10% higher at 11%.
Yeah.
Which I would have to look, but that's got to be one of our lowest rated audience scores as well. 2.4 on IMDb, a 9% on Metacritic, and then a 1.1 on Letterboxd,
Oof.
which is just bonkers.
Just sad.
So we'll jump into some reviews here.
Oh, man. There's not a positive review in the house.
Nope.
Nobody has anything good to say about it.
Like Keith Phillips, who says, "Beware the film that confuses before it even begins."
Rex Reed says, "A violent and incomprehensible piece of gibberish."
And Nell Minnow, "Stupid horror movie based on an Atari game."
And then Mark Savlov says, "It's just the most inept filmmaking you can catch in theaters right now, or probably all year long." Poor man went to go see this in the theaters. Can you imagine?
Oh, I can't.
The look on his face.
Especially like back in 2005 when like video game adaptations weren't as popular at this time.
Yeah.
At least in my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So like you've got to imagine all these people who are like super big fans of this series and going to see this movie and they're like, "Oh, Christian Slater and Tara Reid, like, whoa, those are great actors.
Right,
I'm so
exactly.
ready."
Yeah, it took us a while to get like video game adaptation movies right, and this definitely was not in that age.
I mean, we're like what 18 years later, and I still feel like they're rare.
Yeah,
Like, they do happen.
They're coming through.
They
We're
do.
getting some great ones.
I agree.
I feel like people talk a lot about the curse of like you can't make a good video game movie. I'm like, there have been a few now at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't despair. We're not going to really talk about the game anymore if you're not a gamer. Which, if you're not a gamer, why not?
Yeah, gamers, take your headphones off.
Yeah, gamers, go away. So this was directed by Uwe Boy. Sorry, that's not his name.
No, I think it's Boll. I think it's Boll.
Yeah, but I definitely put eyes in my notes.
Uwe Boy.
Uwe Boy. No, it's Uwe Boll. Uwe Boll?
We're very sorry.
Horrorble?
Uwu Boll. Uwu.
It was written by Elon Mastai, Michael Roche, and Peter Shearer.
Wow, 3 of you are to blame for this. Huh?
Yes. Well, kind of just 2. I'll tell you in a second. The director, Uwe Boy, he has basically only done video game movies, and it just breaks my heart.
Oh, man.
Because he's done some games I actually like House of the Dead. I didn't know there was a movie.
I didn't either.
Rampage. What?
Wasn't that the one with like The Rock in it?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
It's so weird. And then Dungeon Siege, which I was a big fan of Dungeon Siege, Postal, Gross Game, and Blood Rain. Like he's done even more, but those were like the ones that stood out to me.
Yeah, that's wild. So he's done a couple and mostly video game adaptations.
Video game
apparently.
adaptations. He's just a gamer who likes to make shitty movies.
Yep. Power to you.
Elon Mastai, one of the writers, he really should have stuck to like slice of life romance, because later on in life he wrote that movie What If with Daniel Radcliffe.
Dan Rad.
Dan Rad. And he also executive produced and wrote This Is Us, which is like a super famous show.
Yeah, that one did well.
And then Michael Roche and Peter Shearer, they have both basically only co-wrote and produced a bunch of Uwe Boy's movies.
Really?
Yeah, like I was looking through Michael Roche's works, and then I wrote them down, and then I was looking through Peter Shearer's stuff, and I thought I was looking at the same person. They've basically only done the same things.
Wow, they're always together and they're always paired with Uwe Boy.
So I think I have a theory, because I love my theories.
Yeah.
I think that Uwe Boy caught Michael Roche and Peter Shearer robbing a bank and was like, "I won't tell anyone if you produce my shitty movies.
You guys are okay. No, it's okay. I'm cool. You guys gotta help me out.
You guys gotta help me out.
You owe me for like the rest of your lives.
So you produce them, come into the writer's room, I'll let you have a couple opinions, but, I'm blackmailing you, so."
Yeah, I just saw something about them. It's like, "I like the cut of your jib. You can help me make some good, terrible movies."
And they were like, "Yeah, boy." Oh, I'm so sorry.
You guys like games?
You guys like games? All right, what were your expectations for this?
Expectations going into this film was like, it's hard to be positive on it when it's one of the worst rated horror movies because of all the lists that we've looked at, right? So off the gate, I was like, I feel like this is going to make me dislike Christian Slater as an actor. I feel like I really haven't seen him in a lot. I think the biggest thing I saw him in was like Heathers, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
He, did great in that. And so I'm like, I don't know a ton about him. I feel like I held him in higher regard before this movie. And so after this movie, I feel like I'm going to dislike him very much. I wrote Eldritch ? Because I didn't know that the game was based very Lovecraftian and stuff. So I thought maybe there'd be some Lovecraftian Eldritch horror stuff going on in this movie. Then I thought maybe cool gore and kills. I was hopeful maybe there'd be some cool shots of that. I thought there would be a forced romance between him and the girl that was in this movie, just because any bad horror movie kind of just thrusts that upon you and tries to make it work. And then I just wrote, probably not that dark.
Yeah, probably not.
Alone in the Dark. I do not expect a lot of darkness. What about you?
So, yeah, I have some similar ones. Right off the bat, I should say that the reason we watched this movie, other than it being really bad, was my wife has been obsessed with Lovecraft forever. And she was like, you guys need to give me a Lovecraft movie.
Yeah.
So we looked at like lists of like the worst Lovecraft movies, and this was on there. So like one of my expectations was like, if the list said the truth, there should be some great Eldritch influence.
Exactly, right? And it was kind of the best of both worlds. She wanted Eldritch, we wanted a terrible horror movie, and they were like both on the same lists, or like, so it worked out.
You should have seen how happy we were to find this movie. Oof. So I also wrote some Christian Slaters of pure bliss, just some pure bliss Christian Slater moments. I've really only seen him in Mr. Robot and Heathers.
Yeah.
So like, I love him in Mr. Robot though. I wrote a hard to follow plotline with ridiculous twists, little to nothing to do with the video game. In the 2008 video game, one of the mechanics is that you have to make your character blink. Like you have to control your own blinking.
Yeah, he showed me that. Apparently, like if you don't blink, your vision gets like blurry,
Yeah,
which
you
is
get
the strangest
blurry and,
mechanic to
get
add into a
attacked.
video game.
So stupid.
Kind of
so
scary,
bad.
I guess.
For like 2 seconds, and then it gets old. So I expected that if this was like the game, there's going to be a lot of first-person blinking, and you're going to feel like you need to blink.
That did make me scared. There was going to be like a camera thing where like they have like the eyelids blink over the camera kind of thing.
I thought that they were going to do a shot with that. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
And then I expected a top-down view with terrible camera angles and horrible controls.
Yeah.
That's how the original.
If it is accurate, yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the plot of this movie.
We start this movie, and it starts with the longest like monologue, title crawl, like Star Wars kind of stuff. Narrated by some dude who cannot keep his tone the same. Every 6 seconds, it feels like he's like narrating a different movie. But you get a lot of like old civilization stuff. 2 worlds, 1 light, 1 dark. A gate has opened between the 2.
Yeah. I just wrote that the narrator was bored out of his mind.
Yeah.
But basically you find out that, there's the 2 worlds. There's the dark and the light world. They exist together, but they fight each other, which is, a pretty common thing. It talks about the Abkhani, who are like this ancient race who found these artifacts that were able to summon these creatures.
And so right here, it's like, okay, it seems like we're getting Lovecrafty and Eldritch with this, right? It seems like we're going the right way.
Oh, yeah. It was, even though the title screen was bad, I was still like, okay, this is the right kind of story. You find out that the government is doing bad stuff with the creatures. They have an orphanage that they've taken all these kids from to perform all these tests on.
One of the first scenes, you see like a guy talking to this nun in this orphanage place, and he's basically like, you need to tell the cops that they just disappeared. You never know what happened. You never knew what happened,
Ooh.
And all of them but one are missing, or like all of them, they have all of them but one. One kid went away.
Yep.
And the guy who's in charge of taking it away just goes, shit.
Yeah.
He's the worst actor. Like, look, we know this movie's off to a running start because right away one of the first actors that gets screen time is like, get him away from me. I'm sick of seeing this man. He's terrible.
Seriously.
and we're already up and running with the shaky cam too.
It's so bad. I also wrote ugh shaky cam.
Yeah, immediately because we get a shot, I guess, running its way to the kid who escaped, and he's like in some kind of like electrical shed.
Yep.
And I think he's been shocked. His hair is all spiked up, and he's like sitting there looking all sad, and then he's got like these demons in his eyes that like gets this close up, and you see this like stupid effect of like these monsters running around in his eyeball.
And I wrote that Christian Slater is Demon Boy.
Christian
Please
Slater
let
is
Christian
Demon
Slater
Boy.
be Demon Boy.
And guess what? Yeah,
Christian Slater's Demon
fast
Boy.
forward to the future where he's like waking up from the nightmare. I guess obviously it is him as the kid. He was the one who escaped from the orphanage, that kind of stuff. And then the kid next to him, they just have this little conversation. The young boy goes, "What's the matter, mister? You have a nightmare?" And then Christian Slater's like, "Yeah, I was sitting alone in the dark, hearing noises." And the young boy goes, "My mommy says that there's nothing to be afraid of in the dark." And Christian Slater goes, "Your mother's wrong, kid. Being afraid of the dark is what keeps most of us alive." It's like he thinks he's the coolest person on earth.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Immediately. And the kid says something like, "My mommy says that cheese gives you nightmares."
Yeah. You had a nightmare? You ate cheese before dinner, sir.
Yeah, exactly. But like already I cannot take Christian Slater's character seriously because he's got this like weird squint going on the whole time. He just looks so douchey the whole time. He's like acting way too gruff, taking himself too seriously.
It's like he got super wasted the night before and then just stumbled onto set every day.
Exactly. He feels like he's talking through a hangover like the whole time. But he's never like an alcoholic at any point through the plot of this movie. But yeah, it's just clear that he's been through a lot.
Yes.
And you really you do not get a lot of background on that. You get a bit about like, organization he worked with and that kind of history, but like you do not get a lot of like why he is acting as gruff as he has. All you know is he ran away from the orphanage as a kid. Suddenly he's an adult who's kind of an asshole about his life, right? He's like, I'm too old for this kind of stuff.
You also find out that at 10 years old, he lost his memory.
Yes, exactly. So he doesn't remember any of it. Because I guess he was shocked, which it didn't tell us he was shocked until way later. We just saw him sitting next to some electrical equipment looking scared and his hair was spiked up.
It was...
and I guess that's what we're supposed to know about that, right? So yeah, then he gets in a taxi. But
at this moment, I wrote down that there's a beautiful Marvel-esque soundtrack. And I'm going to talk about the music a lot during this because there was so much happening.
Was it beautiful?
I think I was being a little facetious by the word beautiful because it literally felt like I was watching a Marvel movie with the music that was playing.
This movie could not pick its genre for the life of it. It was bouncing back and forth between various different genres and film companies, felt very Marvel-esque sometimes.
And then my next note is, he's narrating! He's narrating!
Yep, he's the narrator for the rest of it. Yeah, which I found out, I thought he was the narrator for the opening title crawl sequence. Nope. He was not.
No, absolutely not.
No, which is funny because it kind of sounded like him. So yeah, we have a different narrator for the beginning, and then Christian Slater is narrating his character's life throughout the rest of it, right? Just talking about how, men are dangerous in this world. You can't trust anybody. And then as soon as he says that, a taxi driver behind the taxi car that he was in is in like cool guy shades, looking mysterious, drives off and starts following them. You get into the least interesting cab car chase scene I could imagine.
I actually kind of forgot it because it just kind of seemed like two guys driving.
Such a lame sequence out of nowhere. And there's like this kind of hippie cab driver that's driving Christian Slater that is honestly the most believable, most interesting of them all.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, man, tell me about your life story. He's like, oh, I'm a paranormal investigator. He's like, what? Really?
What? That's cool.
Crazy. And he's the only one that has like a genuine reaction when Christian Slater's like, by the way, I want to talk about weird things. That cab driver's been following us since the airport. And he starts freaking out. The cab driver's like, oh God, my boss is going to kill me. What are we going to do? I wrote down, get Christian Slater some glasses, please. His squint is so obnoxious. He just kind of has this thing like it's always like he's trying to focus hard on something. I'm like, do you need a pair of prescription lenses? Let me help you.
Sir, call 1-800-CONTACTS. Get some contacts now.
So they get chased through the streets but from one cab car to the other. He's like ramming into his truck, and then they end up kind of like in this one alleyway that they can't get out of. And Christian Slater is like, they're stuck sideways. The one cab, the evil cab driver is driving straight towards them. And Christian Slater's like, here, I'll save you. He goes, stay down. And he just jumps out of the fucking car. And then the car rams into it. He didn't save him at all.
No, and the car rams into the driver's side too. It like full on kills this man. Or at least that's what we're to believe.
I don't think we see him after that part.
No,
it's never decided whether or not he dies. But it's just so funny to me that like, I think he's supposed to be some kind of hero here right now. It's like, get down. He just saves himself. Yeah, he just gets out of there.
Which honestly, what would he do in this situation? There's really nothing he could have done.
Right, he does not have any powers or anything like that.
It's just more like, why say those things and then do those actions?
Yeah. So then they start like this hand-to-hand fight throughout all of the city, and it still sucks.
It's bad.
And it's kind of hard to tell. I'm like, does this other cab driver have powers? Is he just some bald guy? Like, is he just strong? I don't know. They keep doing like this weird slow motion thing every like 30 seconds.
My goodness.
And it honestly felt like it was just something to fill the time.
Yep.
It was used so much. I'm like, I feel like they just didn't have a long enough run time for this movie that they're like, if we just like take several moments in the movie and slow it down, that'll help us out, you know?
Right, yeah.
Several sequences of them like jumping through windows and stuff.
I wrote, for a paranormal investigator, this man has moves.
He's got
but I also wrote that shaky cam is all over the place and the cinematography is just atrocious.
It's so uninteresting.
If this was a video game, I would have turned off motion blur so long ago.
It felt like that. I'm like, I guess that makes it an accurate video game adaptation because just the shaky cam motion blur really is like makes you sick. Honestly, I'm like, I want to throw up. This is terrible. Christian Slater's character ends up stealing a gun from a cop. And he shoots the bald man, and it doesn't work. Baldness gives you power.
Baldness gives you power.
And then we get this awful, I don't know whose idea what this was, but we get like this bullet tracking shot where you get the CGI where it zooms in on the bullet in the chamber of the gun, and then it shoots through, and we get this bullet cam as it shoots through like this block of ice and then into the bad guy, which again does nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
There are sequences where Derek noticed this, he actually rewound to find this out, where the bald man is like jumping from like high building to down to the car. You can see in his shirt where the cables are holding him up so that he can make these jumps. It was so terrible.
Because he looked so floaty.
Yeah.
Like, it was so obvious.
And again, of course, those bits were also in slow motion.
Yes.
Gotta fill that runtime.
And if you're doing those shots with, like, this stunt thing,
yeah.
don't slow them down. It makes them look unrealistic.
Exactly, right? Like, oh, cool, it gives me more time to see how you could not hide the effects well enough. He keeps trying to shoot him, and the bullets are doing nothing.
Yep, nothing.
I don't understand what makes this man a paranormal investigator either. I'm like, you fight people. Do you even have good skills in doing that? Is that something that has to happen a lot on the job? I don't know.
I don't know, but he can do a lot of backflips.
I thought this was a horror movie, but right now it just feels like a thriller action film.
And
like
so
I'm waiting
bright.
for Vin Diesel to show up. It feels like
So
that
bright.
kind of movie, right?
Why is it so bright, huh?
It's so bright.
I want to be alone in the
There's
dark.
no darkness. We're
Not
like
in a crowded
broad
street in the
daylight.
light.
Yeah, no horror, nothing. It's just an action movie. The bullets don't do anything, but when you impale the man, then you're good.
Fish spear, that works.
Yeah,
he like
that
shoves him
works.
down. He lands on a fish spear. Which, why is there a fish spear in a fish market?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This movie feels more like a comic book adaptation than a video game adaptation
It really
sometimes. Like,
does.
again, it feels like kind of like early Marvel movies, you know? It just didn't really seem to fit. It's really funny when we meet the girl of the movie, in order to tell us that she's like an important character, they she's talking to like two security guards, and one of them to the other's like, "You don't know who she is? Get real. She's like a big deal, you know? You don't know her?" I'm like, "Okay, thank you for telling me that she is someone of any importance, I guess."
Did she talk in this movie?
It doesn't really feel like she
I don't
did.
remember.
I will tell you now that, like, really the only thing she is used for in this movie is, like, she has researched and studied, like, the Abkhani people.
Yeah.
So every so often, she has something to chip into conversation about, like, oh, the Abkhani people did this. Oh, here's these things. I can read those because I know the language. And it is almost useless.
And I want to delve into something real quick. So her name is Alicia, and in the game, The New Nightmare, it's the first game in the series that you can pick two characters at the beginning. She is one of the playable characters.
Okay.
So it's Edward and Alicia, and Alicia has a really cool gameplay. She's like super interesting. She is an investigator. She has like puzzles and stuff. And they just ruined her.
Yeah, no, they did not. I don't know if these writers, director know how to write good women characters.
No, they absolutely don't.
She was so uninteresting and just kind of sat in the background for most of it. Honestly, I could forget she was there.
No.
If you took every scene in the movie that she was a part of and cut her out of it, I don't feel like it would be a very different movie at all.
And it's Tara Reid playing her, who's a prolific actress.
Yeah.
So
and see, that's the
technically
thing, right?
bad
Like
movies.
she can do things decently, right? So like that's clearly to blame on like the script writing and stuff, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so can Christian.
But yeah, there's also a part where like she leaves the two security dudes, or I think one's a security guy, one's like dropping off a package. And there's a weirdly like comedic scene where he's like, "All right, well, time for you to go." And he's taking his time. He's like, "Any day now, come on now." Yep, that's right. Get on out of here. It's just like a weird bit of random comedy that was terrible and didn't make any sense.
Every time the security guard is shown, it's like trying to be comedic relief, but it was so bad.
It was just so strange.
I found the rest of the movie funnier than those scenes.
The movie does not know how to handle any kind of like transitions, because after that we get a shot of the evil guy who's taking the orphans in the very beginning of the movie. He's on this boat and they're lifting up this like mossy looking crate out of the ocean. And then it moves on to another scene kind of at the same time, because I feel like when you move to a different plot point like that, right, you imagine time has passed and we're in a different scene now.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
not a lot of time has passed. We're back on Christian Slater walking around the city again, looking very lost.
Yep.
He does not seem to have a lot of purpose. He's just wandering somewhere. This is where I wrote, I'm like, the camera work makes me want to throw up. It's so weird. Yeah. It's very bright for a movie about the dark. And then he just happens upon this like one building that he has the key to, and we're in like his penthouse kind of area.
guess.
And I'm like, I don't understand where he's been or for how long. He was taking a plane, I don't know where from.
No, we know nothing. And like, I thought he was breaking into a museum.
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
definitely his house.
It didn't seem like it was someplace he owned. He looked very sketchy, like looking around as he was entering the building at all. So strange. But I wrote here, I'm like, so far the only good thing in this movie is the score. And that's saying something.
That's saying something.
Yeah, exactly.
And this was about 16 to 20 minutes in, and it's finally dark.
Yeah.
We paused it, looked at the time.
Finally.
It was finally
We've
dark.
made it to the darkness. We're back on the boat. There's a whole team of people who are getting this big crate out of the ocean. Yeah. And one of the men who was helping the main, I assume the main villain, the older man, is like horny for gold. Man's is intense because the crate is actually made of solid gold. And he's so excited about this. Then the entire team of people helping this evil old man end up double crossing him.
Yep.
The horniness took over for them. Gotta get that gold. Let that be a lesson.
Yeah.
Don't be horny.
Don't be horny.
And
especially not for gold.
And of course, these idiot henchmen get greedy and they're going to open the evil crate, releasing something bad. Typical, right? And then as soon as the crate gets opened, Christian Slater, who's sitting in his penthouse doing whatever, like touches his head, like his forehead. He's got this huge like headache that comes across him. And Derek just goes, oh, so he's Harry Potter.
And then at the same time, like before his head starts hurting, he's just like standing there all like looking attractive in his his tank
as he
top.
thinks he's attractive.
And I was like, is this what people found attractive in 2005? And Isaac's like, no, this is what he found
This is what he found attractive. Because that's the only way I can describe Christian Slater's vibe in this whole movie. Is like he thinks he is the shit the whole time.
The whole time.
So yeah, so the box opens, Christian Slater gets a big boy headache, and then what we can assume is the orphans from the orphanage in the beginning are now adults, and they start getting like this like weird calling where they kind of just like zone out and start walking a certain direction. They just stop whatever they're doing and just start walking towards nothing. I don't even know where they're going.
It was so weird though, because like some of the shots they like finished what they were doing and then left. Like one guy's like reading a book and he puts it back on the shelf, and then like other people are like, nope, I'm just gonna leave the sink on.
One person's like doing the dishes and she leaves the water running and walks away. Like it's just kind of it's strange. But then everybody on the boat starts dying. You don't really see you hear a lot of screaming because the old man has like hid himself away in a separate room.
Yeah.
And everything in this movie is so bad. It's just funny. The sound effects are so cartoony. The way I don't know where they found that, but they sound so bad. And for such a gruesome sounding kill scene that happened off screen, he walks through it and there's some pretty clean kills. Really, there's only blood like in puddles around the dead bodies. It's not like splattered all over the place. Maybe there's like one point where there's blood like on the walls, but that's really it.
I didn't see any blood.
Yeah.
I saw red paint.
Yeah, Derek saw red paint.
There was so much red paint everywhere. I was worried because he comes out and all these people are taking a nap in the red paint. I think they might have fallen asleep because of the fumes.
That's true.
That's what happened. They aren't dead.
Derek. They're gonna be all
They're
right.
not dead.
Don't worry about that. No one died in this movie. Kill count of 0.
Yeah, they all just slept in the paint.
But then we go to this like government funded kind of organization that you assume specializes in these type of things, and we meet a guy that actually looks like a detective, and you can tell by his weird gun harness, because I feel like that's a typical thing for like any detective has to wear like that double-breasted like cross in the back, holds 2 guns kind of gun harness. And it feels like this man should have been the actual protagonist of the movie. He seems to fit in a little bit better than Christian Slater is trying to force himself to fit in.
He walks up and there's like a big screen and all of them are looking at it intently. It's like a map, and then there's like these signals that appear, and he just looks at the TV and says, Jesus Christ. And that's it. That's like the whole scene.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on. You don't know where he is.
Yeah, so then I guess all of the people from the orphanage have kept in touch, even though they were like stolen from the orphanage as kids, because Christian Slater has like tabs on them, because now people who know him are calling him saying, hey, my significant other is gone. They just left in the middle of the night, right? So it's like, I guess they all kept in touch after this traumatizing experience, even though he doesn't have any memory from like 10 on. So it's kind of weird, right?
Make any sense.
It doesn't line up. But again, he starts narrating through more of the movie. The bad guys aren't even cool. They're just like regular people that happen to have superhuman abilities. And it was here that I wrote, he is not pulling off that duster. He's got this long leather like trench coat, and he's just not pulling it off at all. It feels weird because he's having a scene where he's talking to like this suburban looking mom, this housewife to one of the dudes who walked away, one of the orphan dudes. And he just looks so out of place next to her. It does not look right at all. And I told Derek, like, it feels like that bit in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the character Mac buys a duster and everyone tells him to stop wearing it.
Yeah.
They're like, that looks terrible,
But
take
it becomes
off.
his personality.
Exactly. He's like, no, it looks cool, I'm pulling it off. That is exactly how Christian Slater's character feels right now.
It feels like he took his character from Heathers and was like, I'm going to be this cool guy again. But you're not. You're not that same character.
Yeah. So like Edward Carnby, I guess I'll start calling him because it was finally at this point I'm like, oh, that's his name. I figured it out now because I just kept calling him by his true name.
And I only knew it because of the game.
Exactly. But like, that's an interesting name. But so it's at this point Carnby like calls one of the dudes who works at the agency that he used to work for. I think it was like 713 or something like that. He's like, hey, I'm gonna need your help. First, I gotta take a trip down memory lane. But it's like he says it so douchey. What a cheesy line. I just hate the way it is written.
And then you jump back to Alicia, and she's like talking about how like her boyfriend's been missing for 3 months. And there's randomly a British woman who just walks up and talks to her. She speaks fully in British and then walks away, and we don't, nothing.
Gone.
And we never see her again.
Goodbye, British lady.
I want to know more about her. Why was she there?
I salute you, British lady.
So, Edward
Yes.
shows up to Alicia and he's like, I found this artifact. I need your help. And she just like punches him directly in the face.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. But also before that, when they meet, they like hug. And he does this weird thing. Like, he almost like moans when he hugs her.
Yeah.
I despised that moment.
You could have called or even written just to let me know you're alive.
Uh-huh. Again, just like terribly written. I just said, wow, her acting is terrible
It's
in
so
this.
bad.
Also, anytime something magical or like some strange artifact is brought on scene, they have this weird like chime sound effects that is attached to it. It's just so strange.
And all the lights start flickering all the time.
Yeah,
too.
just at random moments. She has this like artifact ultrasound that like checks out the thing and puts it in the computer.
It was a laser pointer.
Lasers can do anything, apparently.
She just like waves it over the top of it and it's scanned immediately into the computer.
Also, before the scene, I think there's a bit where like he's talking to his old friend, and I guess you find out he was a great agent who ended up having to leave the society for some reason. And I wrote that like, it feels like there's a lot of buried knowledge in this movie. It feels like there should have been a movie before this one, and this is the sequel.
Yep.
Like, it feels like that is the way they're handling giving us any information about these characters and their whereabouts and their lives. It feels like it's like, oh yeah, you know, we're not going to tell you a lot because you saw that in the first movie, right? It feels like this is a sequel, but it isn't. There isn't anything that comes before this.
No.
And so it's just like terribly told through the story. It is very confusing, does not follow much of a linear plot line. Things are just kind of all over the place. You have to know so much about these characters beforehand.
Really do.
You have to do like homework on these characters, basically.
Yeah, it kind of felt like if you weren't in on it, you were like being looked down on
Yes.
somehow. Somehow it felt that way.
Right.
It's like, oh, you don't know about the Abkhani? What?
Right, they just keep throwing around that word like it's so obvious to us. But yeah, then we get a pretty decent sequence of like stuff that goes on at the museum, right? And I literally wrote, Night at the Museum was scarier than this movie. That is how it feels right now.
Where's Robin Williams?
Yeah, so I
Bring
think
him on.
we start hearing some like monster roaring in the background, and the girl literally goes, how come every time you show up my life gets complicated? And it's just
she like kind of flips because she's pissed at him, and now she's like, oh, silly you, disappearing again. My life's so complicated.
And in a scene that is supposed to be tense, they cannot for the life of them create a sense of chill in the air, because the girl literally has to say out loud, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. She has to say that out loud.
Yeah, like...
And then we finally, out of nowhere, get a shot of one of the creatures in this movie, and it's got this, like, hard exoskeleton looking, kind of looks like it's got, like, a dog-like physique to it. It looks like the CGI they used in, like, Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah.
That's how bad it looks. But at least
Like the
in Mortal
early
Kombat,
Mortal Kombat.
yes, at least in Mortal Kombat, it was kind of charming.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Not this one.
I definitely think that it was trying to be those, like, bipedal rats I mentioned. Like some sort of Geiger-type monster, but it did not work.
The music in it at this point makes me feel like I'm in some sort of like nightclub. Like it's just kind of, it's very energetic, feels strangely weird. I don't feel very tense about it at all. I'm like, okay, cool. I guess, again, an action sequence more than a scary sequence, right? They're not eliciting any fear in this.
Yeah.
It's just a thrill ride.
So the lights start flickering, they start freaking out. The guy is definitely gonna die. It's this cop, he's like walking through the
Oh yeah,
the
he's
museum.
toast.
And then he gets killed, and I wrote in all caps, who was in charge of the blood? It's all just paint.
It looked bad. I
It's all
actually
pink.
think the blood spurt from that one was like a CGI blood
It
splat.
absolutely
It was terrible.
was.
I couldn't even tell you what happened on that kill. It was so bad. I wrote nothing about it because it was terrible.
I'm really searching.
But these like
I'm searching
big
in my brain.
eldritch beasts are killed fairly easily
So
by
easy.
guns.
Yep.
But the people in the beginning that didn't work. The bald man from the beginning, he was shot tons of times, nothing.
Yeah.
But these whole exoskeleton creatures get like thwarted by guns. Because at first I think Christian Slater, Edward Carnby, he shoots it and it runs away, it cowers away. Then army dudes show up from the 713 unit or whatever, and they start shooting them, and it works. They die. It works more on these creatures than the affected humans.
Yep.
And that's stupid to me.
I don't understand what it is with like the trope of having the long revolver, because he
Every
pulls
time.
one out of his trench coat and it's like 3 feet long. Are you overcompensating for something, Mr. Edward?
It seems like it. It's funny to me, when these army dudes show up, they just start spraying the wall with bullets. I'm like, yeah, sure, don't worry about all these priceless museum artifacts or anything. Don't be careful about it.
I didn't see any army dudes. I saw a bunch of Tony Hawks.
All of them looked like they were ready to go in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3.
Really?
That is what their attire looks like.
Even the music felt Tony
Yes.
Hawk-esque. It kind of excited me. I was like, yeah, skate scene.
Yeah. And then, they look terrible. They've also got this weirdly, like, you can see, like, muscle padding in their chest plates that looks so weird. And just, like, it was just so weird, and the sound mixing is terrible. There's a sequence where they're leaving the museum, they're flying in a helicopter, and the sounds of, like, the blades of the helicopter, like the chopper, are actually so loud I cannot hear their conversation. I'm like, that's too realistic. I need to be able to hear them, right? And it sounds like all of the sound effects were downloaded from some royalty-free website that you could find with, like, one quick Google search.
Yep.
That's where it sounds like all of the sound effects came from.
And so the Tony Hawk people like push Alicia and Edward out, and then Alicia tries to get back in.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can't come in. She's like, yes, I can. And then the guard's like, oh yeah, you're right.
He's like, you know
can
what?
go.
That's fine. Yeah.
I think she used Jedi powers on him.
Oh.
Alicia's a
I'm
Jedi.
allowed to go through here.
You're allowed to go through here.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. It seems so easy for people to get in and out of this place, you know? There's a lot of like scenes where it just jumps back and forth between two places. So like now we're at like the girl who's still in the museum trying to get her research, and then Christian Slater, who is now at the 713 building where he's talking to his good buddy who like does surgery there. And he discovers, and the bald guy that he killed in the middle, he's got like this like worm centipede thing implanted like on his spine or something like that. And then they find out that he has one as well.
Yeah.
And when he was a kid, he got shocked, so it killed it. So that's why this like mind control stuff doesn't work on him,
And it
works on everybody else.
It led to imply, which it didn't say this at all, but this was my interpretation, that the reason the bald guy was able to be killed was because the worm was severed.
Yes, exactly. They chopped it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess if he was able to get a bullet into the worm centipede thing itself, maybe that would have worked, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But again, that just doesn't make any sense, because if these worm things come from the creatures themselves, wouldn't the creatures be harder to kill?
That's what you think.
It's stupid. I hate it.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I literally right. I hate the script. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. They just say words that sound important. They just found big scientific sounding words that sounded like anything. And they're like, yeah, this works. This acting belongs in The Room by Tommy Wiseau. Like that is how it feels.
I don't know. I think even The Room was better.
Honest though.
That's what happens when your boy just blackmails you into writing a script.
I guess so.
Yeah, so there's just a lot going on.
You find out that the old man guy has one of the creatures in a cage.
Yep.
And he's shooting up with the eldritch blood.
Oh my god. Okay.
But does that make him powerful? Because he seems pretty non-threatening, especially since in the sequence when they're opening the crate, he like cowered away in fear. So I'm like, I don't understand where this guy fits in the story. Does he
Also,
have any power or not?
this never comes back. Mm-hmm. I completely forgot that
Literally
happened.
never.
It
That is never
comes
a plot
back.
point again.
Forget about that.
Yeah.
It's done.
There's a sequence that feels very video game where I'm like, this movie wants to be Men in Black so bad.
It really
Because they're just
does.
loading him up with all this gear that literally feels like it has like video game mechanics to it. Like, here's some special bullets that will work really well on the creatures, right? Here's this like flashlight. Here's a thing that literally is like a sonar reader thing. Like when they're, I guess the creatures like disrupt electrical fields. So this thing will ping when they're nearby because you will get that sense, right?
course.
Which never comes up.
Never.
It never bings. It never works.
Nope. So, one thing we should note is every time they're fighting these monsters, it is so obvious that they didn't have any reference, that the director was like, shoot your gun forward or pretend to shoot your gun forward, because these monsters would just like be in random places and then just start dying, and all the soldiers were like just pointing their guns in random places. There was no conversation with any of these actors about what they were doing.
No.
The Tony SWAT team didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, so like, girl ends up back at his penthouse. We find out the creatures are called Xenos, which I'm like, dude,
come on.
Alien came out like 18 years ago. You got to come up with a new name for these
Yeah.
creatures.
And if that was a
Definitely seems
reference,
like a rip.
stop.
Yeah, but they're using like constellations to solve a puzzle with the artifact that you use that weird ultrasound for. It's coincidentally like right in their area where there's like this gate that they need to be opening up.
Yeah,
and it's just so weird. And then there's the lights start to flash, and the lore behind it again, like the electrical fields get disrupted. This kind of lame reasoning for this to be happening. Like, shouldn't his beeper be going off as well?
Oh no.
And then this game just feels like a bad Resident Evil ripoff, like some cheap knockoff. Like, it should be called Resident Bad. I don't know.
Resident Tony SWAT.
And again, bullets are still working on the creatures, but I guess he did get the fancy ones. And then I literally wrote, oh my God. We're finally alone in the dark, and we get this like rock music montage of people shooting at the creatures in slow motion. You see like slow motion shots of the bullet shells falling to the ground. The room is lit up by the flash of the guns. This is not a horror movie. I don't know what I cannot pinpoint what this movie is trying to be. It's trying to be so many things that it will never be.
And like, over the top of this is just like the super loud heavy metal music.
It was too much.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
And I guess it's the orphans from the beginning who kind of took the calling. Now they're all attacking them. They look like the vampires from Buffy, but barely.
Like worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe first season of Buffy.
There was one slightly good moment of gore where one of the people slashed one of the soldiers and like their spine is just split in half as he's bent over a crate. There's got to be some weird kung fu fight in the middle of bullet hell between these two people.
So having a bug, this is totally established. Having a bug in your spine, it's just like plugging into the Matrix. You download kung fu into your head.
These orphans are such uninteresting minions. I wish they'd use the creatures more at this point. The rude detective is still like the best actor in the movie compared to everybody else. It's still not great, but he's still the best out of all of them.
Oh, man,
and him and Christian Slater just do not get along the whole movie. And this movie has got to go faster. The pacing was literally putting Derek and I to sleep.
Yeah, I actually wrote that too right here. This movie is so uninteresting and so bad, it's putting us to sleep. Emily is. We both looked over. Emily was snoring away.
She had passed out. And honestly, that's fine.
She didn't miss anything.
She had seen enough at this point.
Yeah.
So then from there, they move on to like this war zone where the dude's like, we got to get more men down here. Look at this place. We need more. There's like hundreds of random soldiers running around doing nothing. It's so stupid.
And you could tell, kind of like in Leprechaun, how like they would randomly shoot their guns and nothing would happen. The same thing was happening in this. Like, it was like half of the cast was doing a different scene than the other half was doing. Oh, it was so
They just had to
weird.
like find things to do. It's such like the sequence of army dudes getting ready is so unnecessary. It's just more bullshit to fill the runtime. At this point, Derek goes, it's just like they put a bunch of genres into a blender and that's how we ended up with this music. That's kind of how it felt. True. It was so all over the place.
Because then it jumped back to that like Marvel music after this heavy metal. It didn't fit. It was so weird.
But yeah, so like the army dudes are like testing the artillery. Well, there's one point where there's like this automatic gun, and in order to test it, this woman stands right in front of it to test it out. Like, you're a genius. That's great. Yeah.
She was like making it follow her with her body. I'm like, you're going to get shot and killed.
But as soon as they get to this base camp, it's established that like there's a generator that's having some issues, and they keep yelling at the dude who's running tech for it. They're like, you got to get this generator up where it's important. He's like, I'm working. I'm trying. I'm like, oh, I get it. If the generator's out, they're going to be alone in the dark. Everyone is just running around with no purpose. And then, meanwhile, the actual important characters of the movie are down underground in some slimy mine shaft that just happened to be there, too.
Where did it come from?
I don't understand why they decided to set up in this area, but Christian Slater suddenly has, like, this sixth sense calling where he's like, we have to go down this way. And the detective dude is like, yeah, sure, I trust that. All of a sudden, he hated him, like, 10 minutes earlier. Now they're... Now I was like, yeah, I trust you. They don't find much down there until one dude accidentally finds, like, this spike pit, and he dies. He just falls straight into it.
And his name was Marco, so they were all yelling after him. They were like, Marco.
I was hoping you wouldn't bring this.
I just yelled, Polo!
Yep. to the sound of crickets in the room of me and sleeping Emily.
Hey, I thought it was hilarious, and that's what matters.
We find out that the old man now has an army of hellhounds. there's just a weird sequence of him standing at the top of a hill, and then like all these hounds just start running around him, and it's just
It made no sense.
no, it made no sense. The set looks like something you would see on like a Universal Studios tram tour.
Oh, yeah.
Like it didn't look like movie ready. It looked like you were just like witnessing it in front of your eyes. It was so weird.
Maybe they broke onto the lot.
The movie is just awful at explaining itself. Again, it's just terrible. So then while this whole sequence is happening down in the mines, they're finding the Abkhani stuff, whatever they're doing upstairs in the real world. There's just this bullet hell going on where all of the army people are just filling all of these creatures, hundreds of these hellhound things with bullets. And now suddenly they're harder to kill.
They're harder to kill now, and they're all dying.
When it is like necessary for the plot to be so, suddenly that's harder for them to kill, and they're actually doing a good job of like killing the army dudes.
Yeah.
And so now we're back downstairs, and again, the woman is only useful for random Abkhani knowledge, which is slight at best.
It really is. And so they like find this like secret room where they have to like pull a lever to get behind, right?
I don't even remember.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
And it opens up into the place at the beginning of the movie that the orphans were taken into.
Yes. Which we actually hadn't seen until right then. This is the first time we see
No.
this. There's like little orphan-sized beds, so you know exactly what these are. They've got their names written on them.
Yeah,
on the bottom, you see
cute.
one was for Carnby. He was supposed to be there, and he's like, but this doesn't make any sense. It was my childhood. I'm so lost.
And then somehow, I mean, Isaac says that there was a logo or something. I had no idea. Somehow they make the connection that this was the organization that he worked
713.
for. 713. That was like, they were doing some sort of experiment to make like these super soldiers.
They were
I
behind
guess?
it all along, yeah.
Maybe?
Exactly. So yeah, all you can get is because his name was in the same logo as the same company, right? So he's like, I've been betrayed in some way, right?
Which, hold on, that doesn't make any sense because the bald guy at the beginning was trying to kill Edward. But if he works for 713, why was he trying to kill Edward? And then if
he wasn't trying to kill him. He was just trying to find him because he was missing.
I thought he was trying to kill him to get the
No.
artifact.
No, he wanted the artifact from him, but he's like, he's the one that got away.
See, this is just a testament to how bad this plot was.
Exactly. We both watched this movie.
We watched
We're
this
both
movie at
kinda
the
confused
same
on it.
time.
Yeah.
And we were keeping ourselves awake, don't worry.
We were trying.
We were trying.
The movie was trying too by like cutting back again to like sequence of just like all these army Tony Hawk dudes getting destroyed by these creatures. And it's just like these creatures lose a lot of their fear factor when you throw like 50 of them at us, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point I'm like, they're not very scary. They seem very like a minimal threat. It's like some of them are dying from the bullets, some of them are getting people. There was one interesting gore moment where this girl gets her head like split.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of neat and gory. They cut back to it a second time, which shows you that was probably, this one's my favorite. We're going to show it 2 times.
But it was sad because she was definitely just standing there doing some work and then a red paint can fell on her head.
Yeah.
And she got covered in face.
Just the way they shoot these action kills was just absurd, and it's terrible.
I don't know about you, but I really want Tony Hawk's Resident Evil now.
Yes. Tony Hawk's Resident Evil. That'd be a better movie than this. That's right. I'll stop the podcast. I'm gonna start writing that one.
Hey, boy, make that movie.
So the old man shows up downstairs in the little orphanage room and is basically like holding them at gunpoint. He's like, you can't get away. Give me the last piece of the artifact because that's the key to open this big ancient looking door that's in the back of this facility all of a sudden.
Yep.
And so like they give him the artifact, he starts walking towards the door, and then the gruff detective dude just throws a knife at him. And it's such a cheesy shot, the way he goes, yeah, and like the way the camera follows the shot, and he just suddenly impaled. It was just terribly written. I really hated it.
Terrible.
But he's got xeno blood. He can't die, right? No, he does.
He does.
Super easy. So what the hell was the point of him injecting himself with the blood? Never comes back.
Yep.
They're not that deep underground, but suddenly there's like this giant ancient ruins just under the surface. I'm like, how is it that only this one door could lead someone to this? How has nobody else come across this, right? And it's covered by this one key that you had to, that was like spread across the entire planet. They had to gather all the pieces together, right? So they found the hive, and then they just leave.
But here's the thing about the hive. It was so obvious that they had like 2 rock pillars and then a huge green screen.
Just a green screen, yeah.
Because it was so disconnected from what the actors were doing. And it looked terrible.
Yeah.
Like it was just like a big mountain of ants, I guess, that was like a bunch of these creatures running around. There's millions of them. So that's
it just looked bad. So yeah, they find this thing that they've been going the whole movie looking for, only to just be like, no, we're gonna turn around and run away because we can't handle this. And then the one detective guy's like, no, I've gotta go back, I've gotta do this. So he takes like one bag of dynamite, gives himself 5 seconds to blow the thing up. So yeah, he just like sets the timer, throws it in there, and then the entire thing blows up in like this incredible passion. You know, I'm like, this movie suddenly directed by Michael Bay, because it was just this huge explosion that goes through the entirety of the catacombs, up through the like the cellar door where Christian Slater and the girl come up through. It like blasts them out of the thing, right? And suddenly they're at the orphanage, right?
Yeah,
like so the catacombs of this lead to the orphanage that where he grew up.
That plot twist blew my mind.
The dude survives. How the hell did that explosion destroy the entire high colony, but not the detective, who was like 10 feet in front of this explosion? It went through miles of caves to blast up, and he's cool. He's just like a bit charred, but he's okay. Everything's cool now. So then we get to the end sequence of this movie, where they're just walking. It's Carnby and the girl who are walking through an evacuated city. When did the city get evacuated? It feels very unnecessary.
And the only reason we knew that was because of Edward's monologue.
Stupid monologue again, yeah. Like, this isn't how you evacuate a city either. There's just like cars strewn about all over the place.
There was just like, it was just an empty street, and there were like 3 cars with their doors open in the exact same position in random spots.
And they walk around so confused. They're like, what happened? What year is it? Where am I?
What is happening?
It is like a 6-minute sequence of them walking through this completely deserted city, looking very confused. And I guess like everything is okay. The race of monsters has been wiped away from the earth, except they aren't, because in Carnby's like final closing monologue narration, he's like, it's okay. Everything's been like, we killed all the things, but it's starting to happen again. It's like, wait, what do you mean it's starting to happen again? Like, all I'm getting is a shot of an empty city. What's happening? And then the final sequence is this stupid handheld cam sequence shot in like quick motion of it like going in a zigzag, running fast up to the 2 of them, and then it attacks them. They just have this scared look on their face as the camera approaches them. Garbage.
Absolute garbage.
So mad about it.
And with that, it gives us our 11th jump scare of the movie, which doesn't seem like a lot, but to have effective jump scares, give me like 2.
It's because I can't even call this movie a horror movie.
I think that was how they made it horror, right? They're like, oh, what do people like? Jump scares.
Yeah, so they had this like, I feel like it wanted to be this ambiguous ending that it just couldn't pull off, and it was just so, it should have just ended there with a deserted city, not like they're being chased by a monster again. Here it is. It's so stupid. So that's the movie. And yeah, just we finished it. We did it.
We literally just like went separate ways and napped.
Yeah, so let's talk about where our expectations ended up. Where those met.
Oh my goodness. So my first expectation was some Christian Slater moments of pure bliss. It just was a trench coat.
No, yeah.
He was just a walking trench coat.
Really?
My next one was, if this list was correct, there should be some great Eldritch influence. I guess the Abkhani are like a cult race that summoned some evil force.
Really wanted to, but did not pull that off in the slightest.
What I really would have liked, because it kind of touched on how the Abkhani like made friends with these creatures and like teamed up with them, and I wanted that.
But
like,
all they
that
did was shoot first, ask questions later.
No, it was so dumb. Hard to follow plot line. It made no sense. Little nothing to do with the video game. It is based very loosely on the New Nightmare.
Hardly at all.
So many liberties were taken.
Yes.
Edward Carnby is a great protagonist, and he was ruined in this.
Yes, absolutely.
If it's like the game, I expect lots of first-person blinking. There were none.
No.
I'm a little mad.
That would have made the movie more interesting if that had happened.
And I said, also top-down view with terrible camera angles. Absolutely, dude. The whole movie.
So much terrible camera work. Well, like, where do you begin with that?
What about you?
My expectation results, I was right. I now cannot stand to think about nor look at Mr. Slater.
No.
And his douchey eye squint thinking he's the coolest man on screen. It was terrible. Eldritch, ? I would not spit in the face of good Eldritch Lovecraftian literature to compare this movie as such.
It is offensive.
I am angry about it. They wanted it to be, and we're nowhere near right with it.
Yeah.
There was like one entertaining kill in the entirety of this. Maybe. A lot of people died too, but very uninteresting ways. I feel like the only ones that were interesting to me were the ones where the dude got his spine split in half, which was kind of neat, and then the girl who had her head, the head split as well.
When she got hit by the paint
can.
The
red paint one, exactly. I was actually surprised there was no forced romance in the movie, which shocked me. But instead it was kind of just like wedged in the middle of the story and didn't fit in well either.
No.
It's like, I kind of like, are they in a relationship? I can't really tell. Either do it or just cut that from the movie because they just could not be, and that's fine with me.
It's funny because I looked at the parents' guide and it actually talked about a couple sex scenes, and they were not in the movie.
Nope.
So...
I can get that in the trivia as well.
Oh, sweet.
I was right. Not that dark. Awfully bright. Literally, the only reason for the dark was because the creatures can't exist in the sunlight. That was really the only thing lore-wise that we got for it. But yeah, that was basically it.
My surprises.
We try really hard here to have a podcast where we discuss, because if we're just talking about bad horror movies and this is why they're bad, it's kind of redundant, right? It's bad. We try to go into this with as much of an open mind as we can and come out of it with these are reasons why maybe it is enjoyable. Maybe it was a decent movie. We struggled.
It was hard.
It was so hard.
We literally took an extra day to process the movie and try to figure out what was going on.
And I sat there just staring at my screen, trying to figure out what to write. So, what did you end up writing as far as your surprises went?
My biggest surprise was how much I hated it.
I literally wrote that too. One of my surprises was worse than I had imagined.
Yes. It was kind of cool to see Edward and Alicia come to life on the screen. There were a couple moments where, he was holding a flashlight. There was a scene where he got, all these cool gadgets that were references to the game. That was nice.
I guess, you stood to gain more from this because you played the games, right?
Yeah. And then my only other surprise was there was a fourth of the music that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
3/4 of it I hated, but there was some good scoring here.
There were bits.
And you can give it that. Mm-hmm. What about you?
My surprises, again, I kind of mentioned the romance was not forced upon us. It doesn't mean it worked. It almost would have worked more if maybe they did force anything between the two of them. Maybe, I don't know. I just know. It felt very weird. It felt very wedged in, it didn't belong there. I'm they could have been strangers and that would have worked better for me. The decisions they made with some of their action sequences were certainly a surprise.
Yeah.
The CGI shot of going into the barrel of the gun and the bullet can felt like that movie Wanted with Angelina Jolie where they curved the bullets and stuff.
That was one of the highlights of the movie, I think, just because it was so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was so ridiculous it was funny, right? It was entertaining for that reason, but I couldn't come up with many surprises. I was falling asleep the whole time. Cannot recommend this movie. My verdict is horrible. Absolutely horrible. I wouldn't deign to call this a horror movie.
How do we go lower than horrible?
I don't know. It's just
horrible.
And it's not a horror movie because I feel when you get into trying to when we're trying to discover a lot of horror movies, I feel a lot of them can fall in the thriller category as well because I feel all horror movies can be thriller movies, but not all thrillers are horror movies. Because
absolutely.
I even went in to look it up. The distinction between a horror and a thriller movie is in a horror movie, it is aiming to get fear out of you. It is trying to elicit that fear reaction out of you. And a thriller is just trying to excite you, right?
Yeah.
And this movie did not feel like it was trying to put any fear in me at all, besides the fact that there are creatures in it, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would just call it a thriller. And it's shocking to me that it's on so many worst-rated horror movies of all time.
It really is.
Because it doesn't feel like one at all.
I don't know anyone I've ever met in my life that would be scared of this movie.
No,
maybe one of the 11 jump scares would get someone, but that's it.
Yep, exactly. Where your verdict was also...
I really fear to call it boreable because I've watched boring movies that I've enjoyed, like The Boogans, for example. But I don't want it to call it horrible because it was worse. So I guess just horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, can we go back on that? I cannot believe we figured this out after the fact. Was it the Boogan?
Yeah, it was one of the.
When we said
Boogans.
Derek said horror boring, and I let that slide when boreable was right there.
Boreable was right there.
So new classification, boreable. It exists. We fixed our mistakes.
We're going to use it. We're sorry. Please don't cancel us.
Yes.
We will use boreable.
So do you want to close out with some trivia on this movie? So
please make me laugh.
The lengthy opening text crawl was added after numerous test audience members said they were confused by the plot.
Checks out.
Yep, which makes sense why the director of the movie, Uwe Boll, he was the one that read it.
I literally predicted that.
Yep, it was him.
I literally called that.
Uh-huh.
That is incredible.
He's the one that read that opening text, but that is so funny to me. Everyone was so confused by the plot, he had to add that. And it was a long one, too. It was too much exposition in a bad way to give it to us. After execs read the green draft of the shooting script, the film got an additional $10 million.
Excuse me?
And apparently Uwe Boll poured the money into the special effects, and I just don't buy it.
He pocketed $9 million.
He must have done something else with that money, right?
There's no way.
Every piece of body armor worn by the various extra foot soldiers during major battle scenes is paintball body protection made by JT USA.
That is
so
hilarious.
We were not wrong
we were
to
not
think
wrong.
this looks funny to me. This looks silly.
Tony Hawk's paintball. It's there.
I discovered through the trivia of this that Uwe Boy is not a great person. He stated on various occasions that he regretted having Tara Reid in the film.
Hey.
Yeah, kind of rude. Not very nice, and I'll get into more of that in a second. He originally wanted Christian Bale and Jessica Alba for the lead roles in this movie.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of mentioned this earlier. Edward Carnby and Elaine Sedrak weren't romantically involved in the games. For this film adaptation, they were made into a couple, which just doesn't make sense. I don't know why you did it. It would have been better if they were just partners and not a couple in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is where I found out the director kind of sucks. Tara Reid had a no nudity clause in her contract at the time of the production and made it clear to the director she will not show any nudity for the film, because that just seems to be a common trope and thing in horror movies, right?
Yeah.
And she has a right to say so, right? That's fine. He tried to change her mind and pressure her to get nude for the sex scene between her and Christian Slater anyway, with Reed still refusing, which caused friction between the two for the rest of the production.
Well, yeah.
On the DVD and Blu-ray commentary, Boy remarked how he wished he would have got a European actress for the part instead, as they're not so uptight about getting nude for movies.
I was calling her Alicia the whole movie.
Yeah, I was one. I didn't know enough about her to discredit you. I didn't know.
Aline
Sedrak was her name.
I feel really silly. I literally wrote Alicia in all my notes. I've played those
You
games.
were convinced, and that's fine. But yeah, so like he was treating her horribly in this, telling her like she needed to do this creative friction for them throughout the rest of the movie. So I feel really bad for her in this thing.
Yeah, that actually really
But you were
sucks.
mentioning how like there was mention of like a nudity in a scene. Apparently in the extended edition of the movie, there is a love scene between the two of them.
Yeah.
That did not make it in whatever version we ended up watching.
But according to the parents' guide, they just like thrust with their clothes on.
It's just so strange. I mean, I'm glad they cut it. I'm sad they shot it at all,
Yeah, that's
especially
really-
with the director
that's
being
really
so
shitty.
shitty towards Tara. So
I don't like him. That's icky.
heart goes out to you, Tara, for having to deal with that, and it sucks because like this movie ruined the careers of both Christian Slater and Tara Reid.
I'm
Tara
sure.
Reid really never bounced back. I think like a decade later, Christian Slater is finally in
Yes.
things again.
Mr. Robot.
Yeah, exactly. So like he finally found his groove again. Took some time, but like after this movie, it was very hard for either of them to find some
Sucks.
work.
I mean, Tara Reid kicks ass in Sharknado, so she got back then.
That's true. She found her groove in like a movie that is so charmingly terrible. Right?
Oh my goodness.
So what's up next on the list here? I think it's my turn to choose
your
next week's
turn.
movie. I have chosen to go with One Missed Call from 2008.
Not the 2003 Korean film.
Which apparently is a lot better.
I would like to watch that, but sometime in the future when I need a good horror movie.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll come back to you in a week and talk about One Missed Call and see how that is reviewed. I believe, as far as I've read, it is sitting at like a 0%. So it'll be our new worst rated movie.
I thought we were straying away from them. 'Cause- Oh wait, Isaac, look over there.
What's over there?
That's the red portal of horror movies that are made of video game
I
adaptations.
don't want to go, Derek.
No, it's
Don't
closing.
make me- Oh, there it goes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
The evil has left this
The
place.
evil has left us.